Schools are designed to be safe environments that foster learning and growth. However, throughout history, there have been instances of punishments that are not only counterproductive, but also downright cruel. In this video, we'll explore the top 15 worst school punishments, shedding light on some shocking practices that have taken place in educational settings. Number 1. Corporal punishment. One of the most controversial forms of school discipline is corporal punishment, which involves the physical infliction of pain on a student to correct misbehavior. While it is now banned in many countries, corporal punishment was once a common and accepted method of discipline in schools. Corporal punishment, a contentious disciplinary method, involves physically reprimanding students to correct misbehavior. The physical aspect of corporal punishment can lead to negative consequences for a student's health and well-being. These practices are intended to deter students from misbehaving and serve as a consequence for breaking rules. However, the use of physical force against children has been widely criticized for its harmful effects on both their physical and psychological well-being. Furthermore, these practices may trigger a fear response in students, making it difficult for them to focus on learning. The humiliation and embarrassment caused by such punishments can also lead to feelings of shame and self-loathing, which can be detrimental to a child's self-esteem. The psychological impact of corporal punishment can have long-lasting effects, such as increased aggression, mental health issues, and a negative attitude towards authority figures. Studies have shown that children who experience corporal punishment are more likely to display aggressive behavior and have a higher risk of developing mental health problems, like depression and anxiety. Aside from the physical and emotional harm, corporal punishment has also been criticized for its potential to foster a hostile and unsafe learning environment. When students witness their peers being subjected to physical pain, they may feel intimidated and afraid, hindering their ability to concentrate on their studies. Moreover, the use of corporal punishment has been found to be ineffective in improving student behavior. Research suggests that non-violent methods, such as counseling and positive reinforcement, are more effective in addressing behavioral issues and fostering a positive school climate. As a result, many countries and states have banned the use of corporal punishment in schools to protect the well-being of their students and to create a more inclusive and supportive educational environment. Number 2. Public humiliation. Public humiliation as a form of punishment has been employed by schools to shame students for their misbehavior. This approach not only demeans the students, but also fosters an environment of fear and ridicule. Public humiliation punishments, which are controversial, might involve drawing attention to a student's misbehavior in front of others. Public humiliation can have severe psychological consequences on the students subjected to it. It can cause feelings of shame, anxiety, and social isolation, which can negatively impact their self-esteem and overall mental health. Moreover, such punishments can lead to increased instances of bullying and peer victimization as the humiliated students become targets for ridicule from their classmates. Educational experts argue that public humiliation is counterproductive as it fails to address the root cause of the misbehavior. Instead of teaching students valuable lessons about responsibility and accountability, it merely instills fear and resentment towards authority figures. This type of punishment can also hinder a student's academic performance and willingness to participate in class, as they may become too afraid of being publicly shamed. Number 3. Forced haircuts. Forced haircuts have been used as a controversial method to enforce dress code policies or as a consequence for other misbehaviors. Students, often those with long hair or unconventional hairstyles, are made to have their hair forcibly cut in front of their peers or school authorities. This type of punishment is invasive and deeply personal, as it involves altering a student's physical appearance without their consent. Forced haircuts can lead to feelings of embarrassment, shame, and anger, which can have lasting effects on a student's self-esteem and emotional well-being. Furthermore, forced haircuts can be seen as a violation of a student's autonomy and personal identity. By dictating a student's appearance, schools may inadvertently send a message that conformity is more important than self-expression or individuality. Such punishments can also perpetuate stereotypes and gender norms, as they often target students who do not conform to traditional expectations of appearance. Both public humiliation and forced haircuts serve as examples of punishments that can have lasting negative consequences on a student's mental health and personal development. They contribute to a toxic school environment and fail to effectively address the underlying issues behind student misbehavior. Number 4, isolation rooms. Isolation rooms, spaces where students are temporarily placed for disruptive behavior, have been a topic of debate in educational settings. Isolation rooms are designed to remove distractions, but their characteristics have raised concerns about their impact on students. The use of isolation rooms has been heavily criticized due to the potential psychological harm they can cause. Students who are placed in isolation rooms can experience feelings of loneliness, fear, and abandonment. This type of punishment can be particularly damaging for students with special needs, who may not fully understand why they are being secluded and may struggle to cope with the sensory deprivation. Furthermore, the use of isolation rooms has been found to be largely ineffective in addressing the root causes of disruptive behavior. Rather than helping students to reflect on their actions and learn from their mistakes, isolation rooms often exacerbate the problem by fostering resentment and disengagement from the learning process. Number 5, inappropriate writing tasks. Inappropriate writing tasks, which are controversial, involve students writing about uncomfortable or personal topics as a form of punishment. Examples of inappropriate writing tasks include writing about personal failures or fears or composing an apology for misbehavior. Inappropriate writing tasks can have significant negative effects on a student's emotional well-being. By forcing students to divulge personal information or confront uncomfortable emotions, these tasks can lead to feelings of shame, guilt, and vulnerability. Additionally, such assignments may also violate a student's right to privacy, as the content may be shared with other students, teachers, or administrators. Moreover, inappropriate writing tasks can undermine the educational purpose of writing by associating it with punishment and humiliation. Rather than fostering a love for writing and self-expression, these tasks can create an aversion to the writing process and inhibit a student's ability to effectively communicate through the written word. Both isolation rooms and inappropriate writing tasks serve as examples of punitive measures that can cause significant harm to students' emotional well-being. Instead of promoting growth and learning, these punishments may further alienate students from the educational environment and contribute to a negative school climate. Number 6, collective punishment. Collective punishment, another debated practice, involves applying consequences to an entire group of students for the misbehavior of a few. Instances of collective punishment might include additional homework, staying late, or the cancellation of school events. This form of punishment is often employed as a way to encourage peer pressure or promote group accountability, with the assumption that students will discourage each other from engaging in disruptive behavior. The use of collective punishment has been criticized on several grounds, with many educational experts arguing that it is unfair and counterproductive. One of the primary concerns with collective punishment is that it punishes innocent students who had no involvement in the misbehavior, leading to feelings of resentment and injustice. This sense of unfairness can negatively impact a student's motivation and engagement in the learning process, as they may feel that their efforts to behave appropriately are being disregarded. Furthermore, collective punishment can inadvertently foster a hostile and divisive classroom environment. Instead of promoting a sense of camaraderie and group responsibility, such punishments may encourage students to turn against each other, blaming and ostracizing those who are perceived as the cause of the punishment. This can lead to increased instances of bullying, social exclusion, and interpersonal conflicts within the class. Another concern with collective punishment is that it fails to effectively address the root causes of misbehavior. By punishing the entire group, the focus is shifted away from the individuals who engaged in the disruptive behavior, making it difficult for teachers to provide targeted interventions and support. Additionally, collective punishment may not provide the necessary consequences or feedback for the misbehaving individuals, potentially allowing the problem to persist or even worsen. From an ethical standpoint, collective punishment has been criticized for its violation of the principle of individual responsibility. By holding an entire group accountable for the actions of a few, schools may inadvertently send a message that personal responsibility and individual choice are irrelevant or unimportant. Collective punishment is a controversial and often harmful approach to school discipline. Rather than promoting a sense of group responsibility and accountability, it can lead to feelings of injustice, foster a hostile classroom environment, and fail to effectively address the root causes of misbehavior. To create a more equitable and supportive school climate, it is essential for educators to employ targeted and individualized interventions that focus on addressing the specific needs and challenges of each student. Number 7, meal denial. Meal denial, a contentious form of punishment, involves students being denied access to meals as a consequence of misbehavior or incomplete tasks. Meal denial may result in students going without food for extended periods, which has raised concerns about its impact on their well-being. Meal denial is an unethical and harmful practice that has been widely criticized for its negative impact on a student's physical and emotional well-being. Denying students access to meals can result in hunger, fatigue, and poor concentration, all of which can significantly affect their ability to learn and engage in the classroom. Adequate nutrition is essential for proper cognitive functioning and overall health, particularly for growing children. By withholding food as a form of punishment, schools not only jeopardize the well-being of their students, but also create an environment where learning is compromised. Moreover, meal denial can exacerbate existing disparities and contribute to social stigmatization. Students from low-income families or those with limited access to food outside of school may be disproportionately affected by this form of punishment, further widening the achievement gap between them and their peers. The practice of meal denial can also lead to feelings of shame and humiliation, as students are singled out and excluded from a basic necessity. Number 8, physical exercises as punishment. Using physical exercises as a form of punishment involves forcing students to engage in strenuous physical activity as a consequence for misbehavior or rule breaking. Examples include making students perform push-ups, run laps, or hold uncomfortable positions for an extended period. While physical activity is essential for overall health and well-being, using it as a form of punishment can have negative consequences. This practice can instill a negative association with exercise, leading students to view physical activity as a punitive measure rather than a healthy and enjoyable part of their daily lives. Additionally, using physical exercises as punishment can pose a risk to a student's physical health, particularly if the student has pre-existing medical conditions or is not accustomed to regular exercise. Excessive or inappropriate physical activity can lead to injuries, dehydration, and even long-term damage to a student's body. Both meal denial and physical exercises as punishment are examples of harmful disciplinary measures that can have detrimental effects on a student's physical and emotional well-being. To foster a supportive and nurturing learning environment, it is crucial for schools to adopt disciplinary practices that prioritize the well-being of their students and focus on addressing the root causes of misbehavior. Number 9, denial of restroom access. Denial of restroom access is a form of punishment in which students are not allowed to use the restroom when needed, either as a consequence of misbehavior or as a means to assert control over the classroom. This practice can involve prohibiting students from leaving the classroom during class time or forcing them to wait for extended periods before being granted permission to use the facilities. Denying students access to the restroom can have serious consequences for their physical and emotional well-being. From a health perspective, holding in urine or bowel movements for prolonged periods can lead to discomfort, urinary tract infections, constipation, and other health issues. It can also exacerbate existing conditions such as irritable bowel syndrome or bladder problems. The emotional impact of restroom denial should not be underestimated. Students who are not allowed to use the restroom when needed may experience anxiety, embarrassment, and humiliation, particularly if they are forced to endure this situation in front of their peers. In some cases, students may even resort to relieving themselves in the classroom, leading to further shame and potential ridicule from classmates. Moreover, denial of restroom access can be particularly harmful to students with specific needs, such as those with medical conditions that require frequent restroom use or students who are menstruating. By not accommodating these needs, schools may inadvertently discriminate against and marginalize these students. Educationally, the practice of restroom denial can hinder a student's ability to focus and engage in the classroom. The physical discomfort and anxiety associated with needing to use the restroom can distract students from their lessons and negatively impact their academic performance. The denial of restroom access as a form of punishment is a harmful and unethical practice that jeopardizes the physical and emotional well-being of students. Schools should prioritize the basic needs and welfare of their students by adopting disciplinary practices that are fair, supportive, and focused on addressing the root causes of misbehavior. Denying students access to essential facilities such as restrooms does not serve the best interests of students and undermines the fundamental goal of fostering a safe and nurturing learning environment. Number 10. Standing for prolonged periods. Standing for prolonged periods is a form of punishment that involves forcing students to stand, either in one place or at the back of the classroom, for an extended duration as a consequence of misbehavior or rule breaking. This punishment is intended to cause discomfort and fatigue as a means of deterring future misconduct. However, making students stand for prolonged periods can have several negative consequences. From a physical perspective, standing for extended periods can lead to muscle fatigue, joint pain, and even circulatory issues. This physical discomfort may make it difficult for students to concentrate on their lessons, ultimately hindering their learning and academic performance. The psychological impact of this form of punishment can also be significant. Forcing students to stand for extended periods can lead to feelings of shame, humiliation, and isolation, particularly if they are separated from their peers or subjected to this punishment in front of the class. These negative emotions can damage a student's self-esteem and sense of belonging within the school community. Additionally, standing for prolonged periods fails to address the root causes of misbehavior or provide students with constructive feedback on how to improve their behavior. Instead, it merely inflicts physical discomfort without offering any guidance or support for personal growth. Number 11. Gagging or taping mouths. A form of punishment that involves covering a student's mouth to prevent them from speaking due to excessive talking or disruptive behavior can negatively impact their emotional and psychological well-being, but also poses a significant risk to a student's emotional and psychological well-being. One of the primary concerns with gagging or taping mouths is the potential for physical harm. Restricting a student's ability to speak or breathe freely can lead to discomfort, difficulty breathing, and even choking hazards. The use of adhesive materials such as tape can also cause injury to the skin, particularly if removed forcefully or applied to sensitive areas like the lips. The emotional and psychological impact of this form of punishment is also considerable. Gagging or taping a student's mouth can lead to feelings of humiliation, shame, and powerlessness. Such punishments can negatively affect a student's self-esteem and overall mental health, potentially leading to anxiety, depression, or other psychological issues. Furthermore, the practice of gagging or taping mouths can undermine a student's sense of trust and safety in the classroom. When students are subjected to such invasive and humiliating punishments, they may become fearful of authority figures and reluctant to participate in class discussions or ask for help when needed. This can result in decreased engagement and hinder a student's academic progress. From an educational standpoint, gagging or taping mouths fails to address the root causes of verbal misbehavior. Rather than teaching students effective communication skills and fostering a respectful classroom environment, this form of punishment may only serve to create resentment and disengagement from the learning process. In addition, gagging or taping mouths can be seen as a violation of a student's basic rights to free speech and expression. By silencing students in such a physically invasive manner, schools may inadvertently send a message that their voices and opinions are not valued or respected. Gagging or taping mouths as a form of punishment is a harmful and unethical practice that can have lasting negative effects on a student's physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. To foster a supportive and inclusive learning environment, schools should employ disciplinary measures that promote effective communication, mutual respect, and personal growth, rather than resorting to invasive and humiliating punishments that can erode trust and hinder academic success. Number 12. School-to-prison pipeline. The school-to-prison pipeline refers to a set of policies and practices that push students, particularly those from marginalized communities, out of school and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. This phenomenon is often driven by punitive disciplinary measures such as suspensions, expulsions, and school-based arrests. The school-to-prison pipeline contributes to the criminalization of students and perpetuates cycles of poverty, crime, and incarceration. The consequences of the school-to-prison pipeline extend beyond the students who are directly affected. By pushing students out of the educational system, schools deprive them of the opportunity to develop the skills and knowledge necessary for personal and professional success. This can lead to a lifetime of limited opportunities, increased likelihood of recidivism, and a perpetuation of socioeconomic disparities. Number 13. Zero-tolerance policies. Zero-tolerance policies are disciplinary measures that mandate predetermined consequences or punishments for specific offenses, regardless of the circumstances or context surrounding the behavior. These policies often apply to drug use, violence, or possession of weapons, but can also extend to less severe behaviors such as tardiness, dress code violations, or minor insubordination. While zero-tolerance policies were initially introduced as a way to promote safety and maintain order in schools, they have been criticized for their inflexibility and disproportionate impact on marginalized students. By enforcing rigid consequences for minor infractions, these policies can exacerbate the school-to-prison pipeline and contribute to a hostile and punitive school climate. Critics argue that zero-tolerance policies often fail to consider the individual needs and circumstances of students, resulting in overly harsh punishments that may not be appropriate or effective in addressing the underlying issues. Furthermore, these policies can disproportionately affect students of color, students with disabilities, and students from low-income backgrounds, further perpetuating disparities in educational outcomes and discipline. Both the school-to-prison pipeline and zero-tolerance policies highlight the need for a shift towards more compassionate, equitable, and holistic approaches to school discipline. By focusing on understanding the root causes of misbehavior and providing targeted support and interventions, schools can create a nurturing and inclusive environment that promotes the well-being and success of all students. Number 14. Cyberbullying punishments. Cyberbullying is a form of bullying that occurs through digital platforms such as social media, messaging apps, and online forums. As technology becomes increasingly integrated into students' lives, cyberbullying has become a significant concern for schools. In response, some schools have implemented disciplinary measures aimed at curbing cyberbullying, ranging from suspension and expulsion to mandated counseling or digital literacy courses. While it is essential for schools to address cyberbullying and promote a safe and inclusive online environment, some disciplinary measures can be counterproductive. Overly harsh punishments can stigmatize and alienate students, potentially exacerbating the issue rather than fostering empathy and understanding. To effectively combat cyberbullying, schools should focus on promoting digital citizenship, teaching students about the potential consequences of their online actions, and encouraging open communication between students, teachers, and parents. Number 15. Overemphasis on test scores. In recent years, there has been a growing trend towards placing a significant emphasis on standardized test scores as a measure of student and school success. This has led to a culture of high-stakes testing, where students, teachers, and administrators face immense pressure to achieve strong test results. The overemphasis on test scores can have negative consequences for both students and educators. For students, this pressure can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and a narrow focus on test preparation, often at the expense of holistic learning and personal growth. Additionally, an excessive focus on test scores can contribute to feelings of failure and low self-esteem for those who do not perform well on standardized assessments. For educators, the overemphasis on test scores can lead to a narrowing of the curriculum, as they may feel compelled to focus on subjects and content that will be tested, neglecting other important areas of learning. This can result in a less engaging and enriching educational experience for students.